Hey everybody, it's Karina with Karina Loves to Plan. Welcome back to my channel. I am here now for days 21 through 30 of 30 Inks 30 Days. And if you haven't seen the other two episodes of 30 Inks 30 Days, I am working through my bottled ink collection. I won't be able to get through all of them because I have more than 30, but I'm trying to use up what I have because there is a reason why I bought these bottles in the first place, but because of the amount of ink samples that I get, I don't always have the opportunity to go back and use the bottles that I bought because I love the ink. So I'm glad that 30 Inks 30 Days is allowing me the opportunity to use all of the bottles. So let's get started. Continuing with Pilot here, we have Pilot Iroshizuku Inaho. Now, I know this ink was discontinued last year or the year before, and I have given some samples to friends, but with how much is left in that bottle, I may hoard it. So I apologize, but I love this brown ink. And what I love about it, it's very similar to Ferris Wheel Press Queen and Castle, but Queen and Castle has the lovely pink shimmer, and I don't feel like I appreciated Inaho enough when I first got it. It's this beautiful, oh, lovely brown, and it's a bit more muted. I mean, brown is a muted color anyway, but it's just lovely. And the pen that I currently have it in is my Esterbrook SD in Honeycomb, and this has a needle point nib. So day 21, we have Pilot. Oh, already the combination of the two is gonna be so fun. Inaho. I'm then gonna use a pipette to add a few drops of Inaho in my Sterling Ink A5 Common Planner, and then I'm going to swirl it around here with a sandwich bag. I love this method because you never know exactly where these are gonna fall, and I always find though that less is more, because when I put too much on here, it's a lot. So maybe I shouldn't put this much. But there you go. It's gonna look so cool once it dries. So I'm dedicating half a page in my Galen Leather A5 notebook to write down the day, the ink, and the pen, and then I'm using my Speedball B nib to do a swatch on the Tomoe River paper. That little ink stamp is from Everyday Explorers Co. And then I will do ink swatches on the 6 different papers. So the Cosmo, Rhodia, Regalia, Onion, Bank, and Yamamoto Bank. And I love being able to compare these because then you can really see how much yellower Inaho looks on the Onion Bank and the Yamamoto Bank, and then on the Cosmo, Rhodia, and Regalia it looks more brown. Really interesting. Then I draw out the grid for my Zentangle, and the Zentangle that I chose for the needlepoint nib on this pen, I wanted to have a lot of detail, and this one definitely had a lot of detail. And you focus on those little triangles and then you see it once it's all done. It's gonna be really cool. This was such a fun combination. I love the crisp needlepoint nib, but it needs just the right wetness of ink, and Pilot Iroshizuku Inaho is it. The ink is a 10, the flow is a 10, and the comfort level a 10. I loved this combination, and I loved how this Zentangle turned out. This one was a little bit more difficult. I mean, you could tell this line here is not straight, so the rest of the straight lines I actually did with a ruler, and then made sure that the curved lines or the curly lines were okay if they were imperfect, but I did have to draw all the other lines with my ruler just to get it the way I wanted to. But I mean, look at just the way that the ink performs on all the papers. It was the perfect wetness in my needlepoint nib. This was probably, out of all of the pens that I've used so far to date, one of my favorite combinations. So that's day 21. Day 22, and we have Pilot Iroshizuku Kujiku, and I have it inked in my, it's not even capped, my Narwhal. This is a Nautilus model, or the Voyage model in the, oh my gosh, how can I not remember the name? It's the Voyage Tromso. I had to look on my spreadsheet to look it up. I can't believe I forgot the name of the pen for a second there. So doing a swatch here in the grid. I remember, what did I purchase Kujiku? I think again it was one of those inks that I purchased very early on in my fountain pen journey. And at one point in my fountain pen journey, I even said to myself, I'm gonna own every single Pilot Iroshizuku ink. Yeah. Obviously that did not happen. This is looking a lot more blue than what I had initially thought. And I'm trying to remember what it was that someone had said to me. I'm actually looking through because I did screenshot it. What somebody said to me about teal and turquoise and the difference between it. And I'm looking. When did I screenshot that? I think I did that before I left for, here we go. So teal is more green, and then turquoise is more blue. So this is probably more turquoise than blue, or turquoise than teal, goodness. So day 22, Pilot Iroshizuku. Oh gosh, that's off center, that's gonna bug me. Kujaku. So I'm now in my Sterling Ink A5 Common Planner. I'm going to just put little, I say little, that last one was not little drops of ink using the pipette, and then I'm going to use the sandwich bag to spread the ink around, get a bit of a pattern here. It's always best if your ink or your bag has a lot of little ridges in it, but it's also best when you're not using a ton of ink like I put down in that blob there. Find that you get more little beads or little strings, tendrils of ink like this versus this looks like a blob, but it'll dry beautifully. So back in my Galen Leather A5 notebook with 52 GSM Tomoe River paper, I'm writing the day, the ink, and the pen, and then realized I made an error on the ink. I wrote Tsukio instead of Kujiku, but I will fix that. Then I'm going to do a swatch on the Tomoe River paper and then the 6 different papers. I find this kind of teal, because it's leaning more green. Maybe I'm mixing that up, but I like how it looks lighter on the Onion Skin, the Bank, and the Yamamoto Bank, and you really get the shading on the Yamamoto Bank. It looks more blue on the Cosmo paper and the Regalia paper, and there isn't a lot of shading on the Rhodia. On the Rhodia, it looks like it's more green. And then I'm drawing out the grid here for my Zentangle. I'm trying to do something different with this. This one was by a different artist. It was d.annaom, so di.annaom on Instagram. And this one, I don't know how I feel about this because this doesn't follow any grids. This was more freestyle, and I'm sure it will look interesting once it's done, but I think I prefer the lines and the repetitiveness of the Varney Kakarni ones that I've been doing on Instagram, which I will link in the description below, but I'm sure it will turn out really cool once done. I think there's still a little bit of residual shimmer in this pen, but that's okay. This fine nib on this Narwhal is so smooth. The ink has above average flow, and it's a gorgeous color. So I'm going to give the ink a 10, the flow a 10, and the comfort level of the Narwhal a 9. It's comfortable, but not my most comfortable. So day 22 with Pilot Iroshizuku Kujiku and my Narwhal. I mean, the two don't really match, but It was a great combination. And just look at the way the ink performed on those papers. Love seeing the differences between the two. And like, look at how blue it looks on the Cosmo and the Regalia. Just amazing to me. And I really liked how this Zentangle turned out. It wasn't the usual one. And I at first didn't like how it was turning out, but the finished piece just looks so, so cool. And I remember why I bought this ink, and I remember now why I need to use it more. So that is day 22. Day 23, and we have Pilot Iroshizuku Shinkai. Again, one of the inks that I purchased early on in my fountain pen journey, but one that I don't actually use a lot of now. My husband actually uses this ink more than I do, but which is why I've never had the heart to get rid of it, because my husband uses it. And for anyone who knows me and my husband's fountain pen collections, his collection was completely curated by me. His notebook was purchased by me. His pen case was purchased by me. And who basically cleans all of the inks that would his pens, that would be me. Anyway, it is currently inked in my Zodiac Pen Co. This is the Virgo model in Abalone. Really pretty. Maybe not an exact match for the pen, but that is okay. I think that's kind of the theme of this 30 inks 30 days anyway, is that not all pens are going to match the inks, but so far, lovely. Pilot Iroshizuku Shinkai. Next, taking a few tiny drops of Shinkai and putting it into my Sterling Ink A5 Common Planner. I'm trying to use basically not as much ink as I have in previous pages, because one, it takes ages to dry, and two, I don't want it to just look like a blob. I want it to look a little bit interesting. And I mean, it is interesting to swatch ink like this with a sandwich bag of all things, but I also want it to not just look like an ink blob. The person who does this incredibly well is Clarissa of the Snowy Studio. Hers always just look so beautiful, but still, it's a great way to decorate your journal without a lot of effort. Back in my Galen Leather A5 notebook, I love dedicating half a page to this pen and ink combination. So I'll write down the name of the ink along with the pen with my Zodiac Pen Co. Virgo in Abalone, and then I'll do a swatch on the Tomoe River paper, and then on the Cosmo, Rhodia, Regalia, Onion, Bank, and Yamamoto Bank. And what I am noticing out of these is how much, I guess, duller the Shinkai looks on the Rhodia, and then how much lighter it looks on the Yamamoto Bank and the Bank paper. But then on the onion skin, the sheen kind of mixes together with the ink, making it look purple. It's really, really interesting. Then I will draw out the grid using this ruler that I bought at Michael's like 7-8 years ago. I can't find it anywhere. I think it's like an artist's draft ruler. And then I will start on my Zentangle. I really prefer these ones with the straight lines, the repeating grid. It just suits my personality doing these ones over and over again. This is not an ink I use often, and one of the reasons why is because I'm not a fan of the blue black. Although my husband does love this ink. The ink does flow well, it's just not my color. So I gave the ink a 5 because I'm not a fan of the color, flow a 9, and the comfort level of the pen a 9. Like, I love this pen, but the ink, the only reason I keep this ink is because my husband loves it and he loves it in his fountain pens, so I keep it. But the blue black with the red sheen is just not a color that I reach for, and I'm glad that I was able to test it out for 30 inks 30 days, because now I know that really the main reason that I keep this ink is for my husband. It's not for me, and that's okay. To have this ink in my collection just for my husband, he better know how much I love him for that. So that is day 23. Day 24, and we have Pilot Iroshizuku. Gosh, why is that hard? Iroshizuku Shin Ryoku. This was the ink that I unfortunately spilled all over my desk a couple weeks ago, and it beautifully stained my hands. Thankfully, I was able to clean it from my desk, but this is a lovely green. It's one of those that it's a bolder green, it's a darker green. And now that half the bottle is gone, I feel like, yes, I do need to use this. I really do like it. It's got, I don't want to say it's not like a proper green. I don't want to say that. It's leaning towards a cooler green, if that makes sense. And I have it inked in my Pilot Vanishing Point. This was from Muse Pens, and this was for the Taiwan 30th anniversary with Pilot. So Pilot Iroshizuku. Oh, that's so smooth. I need to write with this pen more. Shin Ryoku. So just putting oh, that's a big drop. I don't want a big drop. I just want tiny drops. That's not even tiny. Of the ink in my A5 Sterling Ink Common Planner. I find doing this such a great way of adding 30 inks, 30 days to my journal and making it part of how I decorate my journal. Oh, see, I like that. I like it when there's less ink, except for that part that just got screwed up, but that's okay. Because this is the way that, one, I could make sure that I'm using the ink in a different way, but two, it's just so fun to see the characteristics of the ink show through like that using the sandwich bag. Day 24 with Pilot Iroshizuku, Shin Ryoku, and my Pilot Vanishing Point. I actually really love using this pen, and I need to start using it more. Then I'm going to do a swatch on the Tomoe River paper and then the 6 different papers. It's a lot of work doing it on these different papers, but I find that this is such a great way to explore the ink and seeing how the ink reacts to the different properties of each paper. On the Onion and the Bang paper, it looks light, and then on the Yamamoto Bank, it actually looks a little bit darker. The Regalia paper actually looks lighter as well, whereas the Cosmo and the Rodeo do look darker once dried. There's a tiny bit of sheen on these papers, but not a lot to induce headaches for me. That's my level of sheen. Then I'm going to draw out the grid for the Zentangle. I find the whole process of doing Zentangles really, really calming for me. Doing the same lines over and over again and really just focusing on getting the lines right is a calming meditative practice for me, and I love doing these with finer nibs. This ink and this pen match so perfectly, and I'm reminded of why I love the Pilot Vanishing Point nib. It's so crisp and the ink has great flow. So I'm going to give the ink itself a 9, the flow a 9, and the comfort level of the Pilot Vanishing Point an 8. So the Pilot Vanishing Point in the matte green is a beautiful pen, but the Pilot Vanishing Point I could probably only write with for small or short writing sessions. I love this ink. It's a perfect match for this pen, and I also use this ink a lot for my paintings, but I really love the way that it looks in those paper swatches, because I mean, look at how different it looks on the different papers, and then how different it is on the Tomoe River paper. But I also love the different shading that kind of gathers in the pools here in the middle of the Zentangles. So this for me is such a great way of experimenting with the ink and the pen. And while I love this pen and I love this ink, there's a reason why I'm not reaching for it as often, and I still can't figure out why that is. I haven't figured that out yet. Day 25, and we have Pilot Iroshizuku Tsukio, and I can't remember why I purchased this. This is why I think it's important for me to be going through all of these bottled inks, because some of these I can't remember why I bought them. Because now when I swatch it, oh, you know what? I think one of the reasons why I purchased this one is because Carrie of Pens and Tea, another Canadian YouTuber, says that she uses this one to test all of her fountain pens. And I thought, well, if Carrie's doing it. But I like this because it is a different tone of blue than Shinkai. Shinkai has the red sheen that's coming across, whereas Tsukio is actually, doesn't have that sheen that's coming across. I have this inked in my Pilot Kakuno, and it's got urushi and rodden work done by Garage Fountain Pen, who is on Instagram. So this was a commission that I had him do for me. I don't think he's taking any commissions right now, but he does occasionally post pens as one-offs that he sells. So I have this in a fine nib. And oh my gosh, I remember why I love Pilot fine nibs so much, and I need to use these so much more. So Pilot Iroshizuku Tsukio. Now in my Sterling Ink A5 Common Planner, adding just a few little drops with my pipette into or on the page there. And then I will be taking my sandwich bag, which has had its day. I feel like I can move on to a different sandwich bag at this point. And I just try to move the ink around using the little crevices in the bag, and that creates the splatter effect. And I feel like more wrinkles that you have in your bag, the more interest you're gonna get. And plus it's such a great way to see the characteristics of the ink on a page like this. And we have Pilot Iroshizuku Tsukio in my Pilot Kakuno. I remember I bought this ink because Carrie of Pens and Tea uses it to test all of her pens, but I actually really like this blue. I kind of prefer it over Pilot Iroshizuku Shinkai. I like the tone of the blue on the Tomoe River paper, but I also love the way that it shows on the onion skin, the bank, and the Yamamoto bank. Now I'm drawing out the grid for my Zentangle, and I like this one because it's just a whole bunch of straight lines, and the straight lines then create this really, really beautiful diamond shape. And what I love is when all of the lines come together in a corner so that the shading just really pops in that area. And that's one of the reasons why I love the Zentangles, is because it shows off the properties of the inks really, really well. I love this blue ink. I know I just said that I didn't like the Pilot Iroshizuku Shinkai, but I like Tsukio. There's more blue in it than like black. And the fine nib on the Pilot Kakuno is one of my favorite nibs. I love how smooth and how crisp this is, and it's got great flow from the ink. So I gave the ink a 10, the flow of the ink a 9, and the comfort level of the Pilot Kakuno an 8. I really like this pen, and it wasn't a pen that I thought that I would really like. It's just basically a Pilot Kakuno with the ruchi and rodden work done on it. And it's so unique looking and almost a little bit weird looking, but I love it. And I hadn't used a Pilot Kakuno in a while because I had so many other great pens that I just had acquired and I wanted to use them. And with 30 inks, 30 days, I'm reminded of why I love the Pilot Kakuno nib as well as the Pilot Vanishing Point nib. I love the Pilot Fine nib just in these two. I've tried Pilot Fine nibs in other, like in the Custom 743 and in other Pilot pens, and it wasn't for me, but for this nib in the Pilot Kakuno and the fine nib in the Pilot Vanishing Point, love them. Not the most comfortable of pens though. It's quite light and I feel like it's a little narrow for me, but for a quick writing session or for something on the go, I really like the Pilot Kakuno. So that is day 25. Day 26, and we have Sailor Manyo Kuzu. Gosh, my bottle has like different ink all over it. Sailor Manyo Kuzu is one of those inks where I'm thinking back now, I'm like, why did I purchase this? And when I do swatch it, actually there, it looks very similar to Tatsuya Ume Murasaki, but I think it dries to a more burgundy wine type of color. And I do like it, but I wonder what it is that has made me keep this in my collection for so long. Actually, now that I am swatching it, I can see why it has stayed in my collection and I haven't gotten rid of it. And it's currently inked in my Leonardo Momento Zero Grande 2.0 in Angel Skin. Now it does look like that the section has been stained a little bit with it, but I'm not too worried about that because I do have an ultrasonic cleaner that can clean that out, but also I do have another cleaner here that I can just soak that in and it should be fine. So that is day 26, Sailor Manyo Kuzu. So now taking just very little of the Sailor Manyo Kuzu, because I know this one is a very I say pigmented, but it's a, oops, an ink that can definitely, I guess, make its mark. Like, look at this, the amount of ink that's left on the sandwich bag. And I love the effect of it. It's just, I don't want to put too much ink. And I feel like sometimes less is more, especially when you want the little designs coming out. Oh, I love that. So Sailor Manyo Kuzu, this is an ink that I've had for a while in my collection and I'm never sure whether or not I like it. It's a really, really wet ink, especially in my Leonardo Angel Skin. And I love the way that it looks on the Tomoe River paper. It looks more red burgundy with that green gold sheen. But then when you see it on the bank and the Yamamoto bank, it looks pink with that green gold sheen. But thankfully the sheen doesn't overpower the ink too much and it's one that is manageable for me. So then I will draw out the grid for the Zentangle, and I chose one that looks really cool when it's done from the pictures that I see, but I struggled a little bit with creating the straighter lines, but I think in the end it's gonna look really nice. I'm still undecided about whether I like this ink though. I still keep it in my collection because it is pretty, but is it one that I really love? I don't know. This pen and ink combo is so wet and juicy, maybe to the point that it's too wet for me. The ink is beautiful, but I'm now not a fan of the sheen. I may have fallen out of love with this ink. So I'm giving the ink a 7, the flow a 7, and I say flow a 7 because it's too wet for me, and the comfort level of the Momento Zero Grande 2.0 a 9. I had purchased this ink as it was one of the first ink bottles that I had ever purchased, and I really liked the color, and I do like this color, but I'm not a fan of the sheen anymore. And even when I'm doing the Zentangle, I wasn't a fan of the flow of this. I wanted more crisp lines and it was almost too wet for me, to the point where I think there was a little bit of bleed through even on the Tomoe River paper, but I also didn't like how the sheen would just pool in those areas. So it's one of those inks where I think I'm going to end up letting this go. There's not a lot of the ink left. I think there's maybe like a third of the bottle left. Yeah, about a third of the bottle left, and I will probably end up giving that away to somebody who wants to pay for shipping, or give that away to someone who I know is local. So unfortunately, this is a bottle that I've discovered that is no longer for me. Sailor Manyo Kuzu. Day 27, and we have Daimine Celadon Cat, and it is currently in my Zodiac Pen Co. Cancer model in the primary manipulation light. So new pen, and it's not a new ink, it's an ink that I've had for a while, but again, that was the whole point of this 30 inks 30 days, that I use inks that I bought bottles of but haven't used because I get so many samples and I just want to use the samples that I get in my collection. So putting a swatch down with my Speedball B nib, and then I'm going to do some, ooh, let's not spill the bottle, Karina. I like doing the different line widths with my Kakimori brass nib. Ooh, that, uh-oh, I hope I did not contaminate. This is awkward, this particular part here. Looks like there was a little bit on the nib from something, and now I wonder if I got that on the bottle. I got it in the bottle, oh well. So we have day 27 with Diamine, Celadon, Cat. I'm gonna try something that Clarissa of the Snowy Studio did or does when she does her sandwich bag swatches. She puts the ink right on the page, and I feel like I've put too much now, but she puts the ink right on the sandwich bag and then flips it over. And yeah, I put way too much on there. Yeah. And then if maybe there's some way that I could pick it up and put it there. Oh, that worked out well. That actually worked out well. This is a big splodge of ink, but the rest of it turned out well. So here I am with Diamine Celadon Cat. I'm just going to do a swatch on the Tomoe River paper, and then I'm going to do the swatches on the Cosmo, Rhodia, Regalia, Onion Bank, and a Yamamoto Bank. And it's funny how when this dries, it looks darker on the Rhodia paper, but looks lighter on the Cosmo paper and a little bit lighter on the Yamamoto Bank and the Onion Skin paper. I don't see as much of the chromo shading tones, like the gray or the pinky tone like it's on the Tomoe River paper, but there is a little bit of a pink undertone in the Onion Skin, the Bank, and the Yamamoto Bank. Then I'm drawing out the grid here for my Zentangle. This one, I wanted to choose one where I could use both sides of the Imperial nib, but in the end I decided to just stick to the extra fine kind of cursive smooth italic side because I really wanted the fine crisp lines to show in this particular Zentangle. I love this pen and ink combo. Like, how well does Celadon Cat match with the primary manipulation light? The Imperial nib also shows off the shading nicely. It's got great flow. It's so lovely and fun. I give the ink a 10, the flow a 10, and the comfort level of the Cancer model a 9. What a fun combo this was. And I mean, like, I love this pen so much. And I didn't think I would like this much orange in it, but I feel like it's just the perfect distribution of all the colors. But then the ink, there's a reason why I bought this ink. I really love the dusty blue. I feel like there's a theme here with like dusty pink, dusty blue, dusty purple, but that just seems to be me. And you wouldn't think that an ink this light would have great flow, but it actually really does. And this is an extra fine Imperial nib. So on one side, it's like an extra fine cursive smooth italic. On the other side, it's like a medium or a broad, and it works really well in this. So I'm very happy with this ink. And then you can see here the differences in the papers, how light it looks on the Yamamoto Bank, but the shading comes off really well in all the papers, and a little bit of chromo shading in the Tomoe and the Onion Skin. So that is Diamine Celadon Cat. Day 28, we have Teranishi Opera Rose, and it is inked in my new Walltown Watts Glinda. And I will be doing an unboxing of that. It's just so pretty, and I thought the two just matched so well. So I'm just gonna put some on my Speedball B nib here. And I bought this ink completely influenced by Leanne Likes. This was one of her favorite inks, and then I saw that it was a dusty pink, and then I'm like, I have to have it. Have to have it. And it's funny because I think it's a dusty pink, but then when I compare it to other dusty pinks, whoa, when I compare it to other dusty pinks, this looks more orangey brown. So really interesting how that works. So day 28, oh my gosh, I'm obsessed with this pen. Day 28, we have Teranishi Opera Rose. And now just putting a few drops of Teranishi Opera Rose in my journal. I tried putting the ink straight onto the sandwich bag like Clarissa of the Snowy Studio does, and I'm not as talented as she is when it comes to how she's able to spread that ink around. So I'm working with just smaller drops of ink, and I think that is more successful than huge drops of ink. This looks so much better and dries faster. I love when I have an excuse to use one of my favorite inks here. So day 28 with Teranishi Opera Rose, and I'm using it in my new Walltown Pens Watts Glinda model. A review of this pen is coming up soon. And I love the color of this ink, but I also love how it looks swatched on all the different papers, because on the Tomoe River paper, it looks like a darker, dusty pink, whereas on the Cosmo, it looks really flat, but the difference in one end of the swatch, the other, going from the pink to the purple, and then on the Rhodia, it just looks more orange. On the Regalia, you've got the kind of peach with a bit of purple, and then it looks more coral on the Onion Bank and the Yamamoto Bank. Really, really interesting. Then I'm gonna draw out the grid for my Zentangle, and I wanted to choose one that would really show off the shading in this ink, but also the fine nib doesn't necessarily lend itself well to the really, really fine lines I like to do, so I thought this one would be perfect for it. I know there's a reason why this ink is in my bottled collection. It's got perfect flow, fantastic shading, and I really love the coral brown pink color. So I give the ink a 10 because it's stunning. Flow, I give a 10 because it flows perfectly out of this fine nib. And I give the comfort level of my Walltown Watts a 9. So day 28 with Teranishi Opera Rose, just look at the way that it's dried on the papers. It looks like a purple on the Cosmo, and then even a little bit of purple on the Regalia, but definitely looking more orange or coral on the Onion Skin, the Bank, and the Yamamoto Bank. But I do really like the way it looks on the Tomoe River paper. I prefer that. I love the way that the Zentangle turned out as well with this pen, because it was just, I love the repeating lines. For me, for Zentangles, I love doing the repeating lines, and it was just really a great pleasure writing and drawing with this pen. I'm going to continue inking this up, or ink it up again for the month of October. So that is day 28. Day 29, we have Robert Oster and a collaboration with Atlas Stationers. This is Sidewalk Gum, and I had just swatched this a couple videos ago, and I told you how, I've had it in my Mayfair Pens Naria for the whole month, and it's been consistently inconsistent is what I can say. It's a beautiful ink, but I've had issues with hard starts and some clogging, and I love the ink because it's so pretty, but in my pen it was just causing issues, and I hate that because I love the combination, because it is currently in my Mayfair Pens and Naria model, and this is an eyedropper, so I thought, how cool would it be to be in this pen, all eyedroppered and beautiful, and I just thought it was a great match. But we'll see if it even writes right now. So there we go, day 29, Robert Oster and Atlas. See, it's writing well now. Sidewalk Gum. So pretty, but problematic. And now we have the Robert Oster Atlas Sidewalk Gum. So this one is gorgeous, but a bit problematic in the pen, but oh, just so pretty as swatches. Like, look at that. And I love the way that it looks as a swatch. It's just so fun, and that shimmer is fantastic. Ooh, let's add a little bit more down here. Use all of that. And we have an ink that I think is absolutely beautiful, but has been a little bit problematic. This Robert Oster and Atlas collaboration, Sidewalk Gum. I love my story behind how I managed to get this from Brendan the first day of the SF Pen Show. And I love the color. It's got this really kind of gray lilac base and this gorgeous shimmer, but it's been a little bit problematic in my Mayfair Pens Naria model. I do love the way it looks on the different papers with that kind of grayish, dusty purple base, and the shimmer just stands out so well, but it has been a problematic ink. Now I'm going to draw out the grid for my Zentangle using my ruler from Michaels, and I chose one that I wanted this shimmer to really show off, but I also wanted one that wasn't going to be too problematic in terms of the performance of the pen, and I think I found one. I really like being able to combine both the curved lines and then the straight lines, and I feel like this one really appeals to that. While this ink is stunning, it has had its issues. It's had a lot of hard starting and clogging about 30 to 40% of the time, which was really frustrating because it's such a pretty ink. I loved it when it worked, and the shimmer was actually pretty consistent throughout. So I give the ink itself, the color of it, the shimmer, a 10, but the flow I give a 7, and the comfort level of my Mayfair pens a 9. This was a fun combination when it actually worked. And you can see here in the Zentangle how much shimmer is actually there. I don't know if you can see that. I'm gonna bring it up closer to the camera here because the shimmer in here is really consistent, and I really like that about that. But the actual, don't know if the camera is picking up all of that shimmer, but the actual issues with the pen in terms of hard starting, that brought it down a bit in terms of its points. Like, it's a great, pretty, really pretty ink. Like, the way that it looks on those papers is gorgeous, but it has its flow issues, unfortunately. And then the Mayfair Pens Naria model. I love this little thing. It's so unassuming, this pen, and I actually found it really, really comfortable, especially for a pocket pen. And this was definitely out of my comfort zone in terms of like the filling system and the eyedropper, but I really like this pen. I love the way that my fingers rest on that little like concave area here. And it's just, you know, if it wasn't for the hard starts of the ink itself, this would have probably been my favorite, one of my favorite combinations. So that is day 29. Day 30, and we have Tatcha Ume Murasaki. Now, I have loved this ink since I first got it as a sample, and I finally got it as a bottle maybe just a few months ago or a couple of months ago, and I am so happy that I now have this as a bottle. It's not like a dusty pink at all. It's like a brown, pink, purple. It's so pretty, and I know Simone has been wanting a bottle of this as well, and I had to wait a long time to see if it, or when it was available at PenChalet. But like, how pretty is that? I currently have it in my Magna Carta Mag 650. A review of this is coming out in October, but I wanted to have some time to really get to know this first. So this is Tatcha Ume Saki. Oh, so pretty. Now I'm gonna place a few drops in my, I'm gonna do something different. Sterling ink A5 common planner. And then I'm going to swirl it around here with my sandwich bag, making sure, there we go. How cool is that? And then a little bit here, a little bit here. And this is definitely different to how I normally, because I normally try to do like one big splodge in the middle, but I thought, why not do it all over? Oh, how cool. So now back in my Galen leather A5 notebook, I'm writing down the day. I can't believe I've made it to day 30. And then I'm gonna write down the name of the ink. And I'm really trying to use the flex nib on this pen. And don't worry, a proper review of this pen will be coming out in a few weeks. So really, this pen is testing how well I can write with the flex nib, but also how lightly I can write with this. So I'm also swatching on the Tomoe River paper and then on the 6 different papers. And this ink just turns out so interesting on all 6 of these papers. It's just like a surprise when I swatch on the 6 different papers. And then I chose a Zentangle that really didn't require a grid. I did have to trace out, you know, where the grid would be, but this was really interesting because I didn't have a grid to follow, but I did use the flex nib here to work out the Zentangle, and I love it. I love this ink. I know I love this ink, and I bought this bottle for a reason, but combined with this pen, it is too wet. I enjoyed doing the Zentangle with this, but with everyday writing, it's just too wet. I will keep this inked in October though, just to continue testing it. So I gave the ink a 10 because, I mean, it's gorgeous. The flow a 7 because it's just too wet. And the comfort level of the Meg 650 a 9. I love the way this ink looks on the different papers. It looks purple on the Cosmo and a little bit on the Regalia. And then you can really see the pinky base here with like the deeper burgundies and browns and just the way it looks on the Tomoe River paper. But I really loved this Zentangle because it really showed off the shading properties of this ink. And I could really make use of the flex nib with this Zentangle. However, like, look at how wet that is. Just in the writing sample that I just did. I'm going to keep it inked for October just to continue testing it out and see, you know, maybe I do need a drier ink in this, but we'll see how that goes. So that is day 30. So that concludes 30 inks, 30 days for the month of September. And I loved being able to work through all, well, not all of my bottled inks because there's some that haven't been used yet. I have more than 30, but to be able to go through some of these that I haven't had a chance to use in a while. And I'm looking through all of these and I'm thinking which ones are my favorites. But the thing is, it's so hard to choose because I know I bought these bottles for a reason. And I bought them because I really do like them. Now, there are a couple of bottles where I'm already thinking of, unfortunately, letting them go. Sailor Monyo Kuzu, which is going to a friend of mine locally. I'm still unsure about Colorverse Alpha Pisces. I think I'm going to continue using it. I just need a better nib for it. But the rest of them, I am absolutely in love with, other than Shinkai. And I explained why I still have that in my collection. That's mainly for my husband. Like, I love the tone of Tsukiyo better than the tone of Shinkai. That's just me. And then, yeah, like the Diamine Enchanted Ocean, I had considered giving that away, and I'm so glad that I didn't because it's a stunning, stunning ink. Oh, 30 inks, 30 days is a lot of hard work, but I love the end result. And I loved being able to, let's just flip through a couple of other things here, being able to just see all of the different pen and ink pairings. It allows me to use 30 pens in the span of a month and 30 different inks. So it's such a great way to be able to use what I've got and just really play around with pens and inks. September was a crazy month, but I managed to get it done. And maybe I will do this in November. We'll see how the schedule goes, but I'm also running out of pages in this notebook. I may not make it to the end of the year with this notebook. Gosh. Again, fantastic little project for the month. A great way to use your pens and inks and also discover what it is that you really like and what you don't like. Love it. All right, but that is it for me. Thank you all so much for watching. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. If you like this video, please leave me a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching and have yourselves a great day.